So in this video, I want to talk about the concept of the second coming of entrepreneurial branding and business as it relates to the metamorphosis of those aspects. And so I'm actually the creator of the second coming of entrepreneurial branding and the second coming of solo-entrepreneurship. And I have publications and works below and platforms that you can explore to learn more about that. It's for the New Era Marketplace. So I'm going to be talking more about the new now business normal in order to actually be an evolutionized, optimized brand and business for this new now business normal era, so to speak. There are concepts through the New Era Marketplace that you will have to learn and gain those fundamentals. So I want to just spend a little bit of time talking about the second coming vibration and why that's actually not your final form, even from a metamorphosis perspective. It really is like it's the John the Baptist of your next innovation of beingness, okay? It's the forerunner, right? But there's going to be a third coming element of what takes a final form, in a sense, and that is more so going to be what's going to be more of that eternal branding factor, for you. The one that you'll actually build your lifelong legacy around that will continue long, after you transition, but it is starting in the now. So let me just talk a little bit about the second coming of the branding and business metamorphosis aspect and why certain frameworks from branding and business are breaking down. They're starting to decompose because what most are going to find, and I've talked about this in other videos of the series, is that we think that we have come to a point where there's soaring in success. There's the butterfly aspect, but that is actually not what has been taking place. From my evaluation of business and being someone who has created the metamorphosis paradigm for this next level of evolution as it relates to entrepreneurship and business, I realize that what has happened throughout the years has actually not been a true metamorphosis. It's been an illusion of a metamorphosis. It's been a transformational process, but it hasn't been an evolutionary process, and that's important. And even the term evolution or evolutionary context, even that has taken on a new metamorphosis as things are progressing. So in other videos, I've talked about how the transformational process has been more like the tadpole to a frog. It's a bigger version of something that, it's the same thing, right? Just the adult version. Where with the caterpillar to the butterfly process, it breaks down and becomes something completely different, And so you're going to start seeing more of that happen in the marketplace. And starting with the branding and the business, it's going to take on a completely different transformation and evolutionary process. It's more of a transformational process. Combining transformation and evolution to be one, where there's not the separateness in terms of transformation, more like the tadpole again to the frog, or having these kind of quick quantum experiences where it's a kiss that transforms something from, a frog, to a prince and vice versa. But one of the things that we know is that even in that process, it can go back to being what it was. And we've seen that even metaphorically in, the Disney films or so about the frog and the prince. One can turn to one, but it certainly something can happen and it can go back to that or something else. The difference with evolution is once it goes through, like a butterfly goes through a unique metamorphosis, it actually can't return to be something that it once was, because it again has become unformed to reform into a completely different entity of expression. So how does this relate to the second coming? All right. of these different frameworks, right? So the way it relates to that is that there's a part and an aspect of you as a brand, as a business, that is going to have a rebranding format that comes forth, but it will not be the final form. What it is it's an embodiment of the newer context that then has to be built upon with new fundamentals for a new foundation, a new formation, and new functionalities, okay? So the second coming of your branding and your business, hear me when I say this, again, will not be the final form. It is a part of the metamorphosis that is actually transitioning you into the new now business normal frameworks and actually how that relates to branding, all right? So some of the things that you're going to see breaking down as you are in your second coming aspect is a lot of the concepts that you've learned, especially in terms of branding yourself according to a specific focus that is really more related to your past than it is not just the present, but that which is emerging. You're going to see those things start to break down, okay? You're going to see the journey that you've been through actually is not what you're here to be delivering chronically and consistently, all right? Even though that's what's been taught, that's going to break down, all right? Branding yourself according to a niche focus is going to break down. The way that you show up in social media as a brand from a consistency standpoint is going to break down, all right? Especially as you start going through the rebranding process. As you're going through the rebranding process, and it's just a phase of the metamorphosis, what you're going to find is that you're not going to even be building your next level of the brand from a grander context. You're not going to be building that even according to the rebranding aspects. There will be elements, but you're going to take on a completely different form in evolution. But everything that you've created will have its place, but it will not have its place at center stage. So some of what I'm talking about is going to sound very foreign to most of you, and guess what? And it should, all right? And as it plays out, it's going to play out very differently than you've expected, right? If you're not in resistance to this type of process, then as the breakdown is happening, the decomposing, because it will, okay, you won't struggle through the process. It'll actually accelerate for you, right? And the reason why, again, this is important is because all of what you've been taught about business and about branding, it literally is about to shatter, right? You will no longer in the second coming, as your second coming vibration, you will no longer be a traditional brand. You're going to come into what I've been teaching for years of being a brand expression, learning how to become the epitome of a brand and empire expression. Once you start embodying that newer expression through, yes, your rebranding process and development, then again, that's just setting you up for what is going to come in terms of a more significant form, all right? And it's a very, very unique process. But I wanted to talk about this because as this starts to happen, something else that will start to emerge right before that final form is coming into fuller manifestation is the second coming of your business financial factor, okay? Going through that type of financial chrysalis experience is going to break down even how you have done your business finances and the whole economic structures. You're going to see those things change and play out. So I'm telling you this because you have to be aware that honestly, for me, this is old news, all right? But for most, they're like, what? You know, it's new to them. But we are a minimum of 50 years behind in evolution, especially as it relates to the marketplace dynamics. But that's about to shift and change because the ultimate marketplace metamorphosis is underway. So as that's underway, again, second comings of brands are going to have to start to take on that formation for the moment. But hear me when I say this, and it's going to sound redundant, but I have to keep repeating it. The rebranding will still not be the final form, but you have got to play it out in some elements as if it is a form that's coming to play that may be there, for a moment. But I have ways to teach people through these processes that even when you're going through that, how to make this an evolutionary experience for yourself and for your audience, so they're not, confused of thinking that there's no consistency in the branding, what's it standing for, different things like that. But again, that's all of the breakdown within the metamorphosis process, right? But at least that second coming of the vibration will help you to have sustainability through the next phase. So this is a very deep process. It's a very unique, process, and it's one that's required. But what's interesting is that most are unaware. Even your top experts, your legendary figures who've been inspiring you and teaching you for years, have zero clue about what's been emerging and what actually is required for this next level. Now, good thing for some of them, they've built up their brands to have that long-standing longevity to a certain extent, but even that is going to break down. Most are going to realize that they were not prepared for the bigger emergence and the bigger shifts. So let me talk a little bit about why that is. Well, in the developmental processes or frameworks, they've been developing in what I call more of this latitudinal or longitudinal approach, but it hasn't been both. It hasn't been the wide and, the deep, the long, it hasn't been the expansiveness, all right? It's been kind of one-dimensional. And because it's been one-dimensional, that means there's been an evolving of concepts based on a certain premise, all right? A certain foundation, different fundamentals. They keep expanding and doing new and improved versions of those, calling it evolution, and then saying this is transformed into something else. But no, that is actually not what has happened. And if you've listened to and looked at other videos that I've done in this series, you're going to hear that redundancy. And I'm saying and emphasizing that for a reason. And even those who've been through their own rebranding, it's still not the second coming vibration of what's going to be required to make shifts into the new now business normal, which is why I'm doing this vlog series, because it is bringing others through that metamorphosis and that evolutionary process, even in awareness, so that they can be synced up for that. But going back to the John the Baptist aspect, the second coming, element, right? All right, so I want to talk about that because I spent a lot of years doing developmental work around that particular premise, and I spent years even in my own second coming rebranding or second coming branding aspect and entrepreneurial aspect as well. And as I mentioned, I have publications below that you can check out and you can explore what that part of the dynamics is and why it is actually required. But the reason why I want to shift you into the new now business normal frameworks and accelerate that process is because that ultimately is what is really causing the metamorphosis and the disruption in a sense, because it is the new emerging paradigm that's the more solid framework. But again, I'm sharing concepts to get people prepared to sync up into that. But again, until they've actually come through the required second coming of branding and solo entrepreneurship for the online marketplace, the new era marketplace, you can't even sync up, into that. So I'm not going to get into too many details in terms of what all that second coming element entails, because that's a completely different training. And like I said, I have publications below that can definitely prime the basics for that, because that will be where you need to start. What I'm doing is just making you aware of the different, some of the different aspects that you do need to be aware of. because even with the second coming of coaching, it's the second coming of all these different premises that you're familiar with, right? But they're helping you to develop the fundamentals and to ground those, because then a new shape's going to take form in all of these areas. The whole entrepreneurial framework, everything you can think of, is going to come into a newer formation. And as it comes into a newer formation, you're going to have to then even suspend, if you will, the even aspects of your rebranding. That what will happen is they will reposition. So you're going to see a lot of that taking place. That which is built up that seems like it's going to be the bigger thing or so, it is going to reposition itself as more of a sub-theme and a component and an element of your branding expression. So let me talk a little bit about the branding expression and how that plays a part in the second coming aspect. And that's what I've been teaching, brand expression, for years. You know, I've never been about the traditional branding aspect. And even if I do teach from that, it is very much the evolution of it. So when being a brand expression, what you see will play out is multifaceted aspects of an individual. And it will be the personal and professional branding elements coming together, working like a hand in glove. And there's certain different, I'll just say they're units. They're units of your development that has evolved, that plays out in very multi-dimensional ways. So some of this is going to sound a little foreign to some of you, like, what? You know, this sounds crazy. It may, but it's going to be what's required, okay? One of the things I bring forth also is the chief cornerstone branding factor. That means the chief cornerstone is required, but it often is the stone, just like in the Bible, the stone that the builders rejected. But the very concepts that people have rejected become the chief cornerstones. So let me talk a little bit about that for a moment. So this whole thing that's been going on for, centuries it feels like, but maybe I'm exaggerating here, but for several years around this one niche focus, focusing on this one thing, developing that, and then you can go on to do other things and all these different things. That has been the biggest detriment to the marketplace, to an entrepreneur. And I have trainings, about that too. And I'll put playlists, below, around that as well. Like I said, for me, this stuff, I've been doing this for a long time. But it has been the stone that the builders have rejected. And they tried to come up with everything around trying to get you to focus on those a core element or a core aspect to build your brand around. So what's going to be interesting, because that is breaking down in this metamorphosis aspect, then what are they going to do? And what will they have to provide for you to teach you how to expand beyond that? Oh yeah, of course, they'll offer you, have your multiple streams of income. That's multifaceted. That's diversifying, what you do too. Nope. Because whatever they're talking about is going to be under an old framework. It itself has not had its second coming vibration for what's required for a new era marketplace. Maybe it's had a second coming of innovation, okay, and some rebranding for more innovative success. Again, not a requirement for the new era marketplace. Something else I'm going to, since I keep bringing that up, I'm actually going to supply you all, or I'm going to share with you all, a blog post so that you can, a blog platform so you can learn about the nature of the new era marketplace, all right? So basically what I'm doing in this particular video or vlog is I'm just kind of throwing some things out there at you, because this is part of the unformedness, all right, that I've been talking about within the series. So some of this may sound a little bit scattered and you can't make much of it, make much sense of it. But within your metamorphosis process in the breakdown, there's going to be so many different elements and aspects that you can't make sense of, that is kind of jumbled up. but you're going to have to be able to navigate that process, because the information around it and stuff will come at you, and it just be coming at you. And the reason why it's coming at you and it can seem like it's so much is because we lack the evolution, because we're so far behind. But now the catching up has to take place in the most simplest and accelerated formats. But the process itself is not going to slow itself down for you. The metamorphosis is not going to slow itself down for you. It's not on a self-paced type of experience. So you're going to have to sync up with these new dynamics, whether you get it or understand it or not. Like I said, I'm just seeding you with things that are going to be going away. And if you have built your brand and your business models according to those old frameworks and those old structures, and you haven't taken the opportunity to get to know what the new is and what the required is, if you don't have the chief cornerstone, let me tell you something. All of the ground will be sinking sand, because you may have a structure, but let me tell you something. One little hit of something, of the newness that comes in, is going to take those structures down, because they can't coexist together, all right? And a caterpillar life versus a butterfly life are two different trajectories. Two different trajectories, all right? So now you've got to come into that evolution of the metamorphosis process, because that's what's going to be ultimately optimized in terms of you being able to be effective moving forward. So, back to the lecture at hand around the second coming aspect. It all ties together. It's all, everything's jumbled, but it's all one, all right? So within the second coming vibration, like I said, it's not going to be just you coming with a new innovative aspect of who you are. It is going to be a complete breakdown in terms of what you've learned about branding, what you've learned about business and those fundamentals. You're going to start to experience the metamorphosis of that. So the decomposing aspect of you and your brand to come into this newer form, like I said, and the newer form is just setting you up. It's setting you up. So some of you might be thinking, well, why even put it out there in my kind of second coming dynamics if that's not going to be the final form? Well, you have to, because that's where the newer content and context of you is going to be built around that, all right? But what you're going to find is that is just a dimension of you, but it will not be the grander overall picture of what's going to be more standing and long-lasting, because you're going to be morphing. You're going to be doing a lot of morphing. So you're morphing to the second coming of your vibration, and that will still serve people long after you're going on to do this bigger context. Like I said, this is a very interesting experience, but it is beyond necessary, and it's very much required. So like I said, I'll have information. Instead of continuing to go on and on about a lot of things, I'm just going to make sure that I have the information for you below so that you can learn about how your branding does need to take on this different format and just this different areas, because it's a very layered dynamics that is required, okay? A very layered dynamics that is required. But there's so much more, to this, but I don't want to overload you too much. I just felt that I needed to come and start talking about it. But as I started coming to talk about it, I was throwing different things out there. And I said, well, actually, I'm preparing them in a sense for, actually, this is how it comes at you. But it's not information overload. What it is disruption to the mind and the beingness, so that you can now start to ingest, if you will, a different way of how you are going to be in the receptive mode for what you take in and how you start this new process of preparation, okay, in the jumbledness of what's going on, what's taking place, So, yeah. All right. So I look forward to being able to help you navigate, this process. But just know, like I said, the importance of your second coming of the branding and business, aspect, your entrepreneur aspect, it is at hand. And And you're going to be successful in this. And it will be a fun yet very interesting process. But how you go through it is going to depend on you. My encouragement is don't be in resistance. Don't try to know something that you don't know. Allow yourself to be unformed, to be in the decomposing aspect, and to re-emerge into this newer vibration of you so that you can ground that and embody that, build from there, and then allow the next level of what's going to come through in that third vibration that's going to be ready for this new now business normal era, okay? And marketplace dynamics. All right, so I look forward to bringing you more videos soon.